The morning light in Honggang City had that golden quality that made everything look expensive, and BehindThePerfection knew exactly how to use it. She positioned her phone against a concrete planter, adjusted the angle 3 times and checked her reflection in the camera. The luxury black sedan behind her gleamed like a promise she couldn't afford to keep. "Good morning, beautiful people," she said, her voice bright with manufactured confidence. "Day 37 in Honggang City, and I'm still living my best life. This is what winning looks like when you bet on yourself." She gestured casually toward the car, letting viewers assume what they wanted to assume. The comments rolled in immediately. "Queen energy. Goals. Show us the interior." BehindThePerfection's smile widened even as her stomach twisted with familiar anxiety. Her phone battery was at 8%. Her room in the shared apartment was smaller than most people's closets. But none of that mattered when the camera was on. "Success abroad isn't just about the destination," she continued, walking slowly beside the sedan. "It's about the journey, the growth, the version of yourself you become when you stop making excuses and start making moves." She was so focused on her own reflection in the phone screen that she didn't notice the footsteps approaching from behind. She didn't see the tall figure in the perfectly tailored charcoal suit until his voice cut through her monologue like ice through warm water. "Interesting journey," the voice said. "Especially considering that's my car." BehindThePerfection's heart stopped. She spun around, her phone nearly slipping from her grip. The man standing before her was exactly the kind of person she'd been pretending to know, immaculately dressed, impossibly composed, and looking at her with an expression that somehow managed to be both cold and curious. Park Jae-won didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Everything about him, from his perfectly styled black hair to the way he held his briefcase, spoke of control. His eyes were dark and unreadable, fixed on her with the kind of attention that made her feel simultaneously exposed and invisible. BehindThePerfection started, her mind racing. The livestream was still running. 2,000 people were watching. "I was just using my property for content," Jae-won finished. He glanced at her phone, at the camera still recording. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Without permission." "I didn't touch anything," BehindThePerfection said quickly, her accent thickening with stress. "I was just standing near it." "That's not illegal." "No," he agreed. "Just dishonest." The word landed like a slap. BehindThePerfection felt her face grow hot, felt the familiar burn of shame mixing with anger. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that this was survival, that image was currency when you were alone in a foreign country with a dwindling bank account and a visa that would expire before her dreams could catch up. But the words stuck in her throat. Jae-won reached past her, she flinched slightly, and unlocked the car with a subtle beep. "Next time you want to use something that doesn't belong to you," he said, opening the driver's door, "at least have the courtesy to ask." He slid into the car with practiced ease and drove away without another word, leaving BehindThePerfection standing on the sidewalk with her phone still recording and her carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. She ended the livestream with shaking hands. By the time she made it back to her cramped room in the shared apartment, her phone was exploding with notifications. The video had been clipped, shared, remixed. Korean CEO destroys content creator. The most awkward call-out of 2024. When flexing goes wrong. But something strange was happening too. Her follower count was climbing. Fast. 3,000 new followers. 5,000. 10,000. People weren't just laughing at her. They were fascinated by the tension, by the way Jae-won had looked at her, by the raw humanity of her embarrassment. Some comments were cruel, but others were surprisingly supportive. At least she owned it. That guy was fine though. I need to know what happens next. BehindThePerfection sat on her narrow bed, staring at her phone screen until her eyes burned. She should have felt devastated. Instead she felt something else entirely. Seen. For all the wrong reasons maybe, but seen nonetheless. She checked Jae-won's profile out of morbid curiosity. Park Jae-won, CEO of Silverline Group. Tech and real estate. Net worth estimated in the hundreds of millions. His social media was corporate and cold, press releases, award ceremonies, carefully curated images that revealed nothing. And then she noticed something that made her breath catch. He was following her. Park Jae-won, the man who had just publicly humiliated her, had followed her account within an hour of their encounter. Baimida stared at the notification for a full minute, trying to understand what it meant. It could be a power play. It could be curiosity. It could be nothing at all. But it felt like something, and in her world of carefully managed impressions, feeling was dangerous. She put her phone face down and tried to sleep. It didn't work. The message came 3 days later, direct and unexpected. Dinner. Thursday, 8 p.m. Cloud9 Lounge. Consider it a cultural collaboration. No greeting. No explanation. Just an address and a time. Baimida read the message 7 times, looking for subtext, for threat, for anything that would help her understand what Park Jae-won wanted from her. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on something neutral. Why? His reply came within minutes. Because I'm curious. And because you're still using my car in your profile picture. She looked at her profile. He was right. The thumbnail of her viral video showed her standing confidently beside his sedan, frozen in a moment before humiliation. She'd kept it because it was the most views she'd ever gotten. I'll change it, she typed. Don't, he responded. Just meet me Thursday. Baimida spent the next 2 days in a state of anxious preparation. She borrowed a dress from her roommate, a simple black thing that looked more expensive than it was. She watched YouTube tutorials on how to act in upscale Korean restaurants. She rehearsed conversations in her bathroom mirror, trying to prepare for every possible scenario. Cloud9 Lounge was exactly as intimidating as its name suggested. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering sprawl of Honggang City. The lighting was subtle and golden, designed to make everyone look beautiful and successful. Baimida felt like an imposter the moment she walked through the door. Jae-won was already seated at a corner table, scrolling through his phone with the kind of casual elegance that came from never having to worry about whether he belonged. He looked up as she approached, his expression unreadable. You came, he said, standing. It wasn't quite a question. You made it sound important, Baimida replied, sitting across from him. Her hands were trembling slightly, so she folded them in her lap. Everything I do is important, Jae-won said, and then something unexpected happened. The corner of his mouth quirked upward, just slightly. Or so people tell me. A waiter appeared with menus and water. Baimida accepted both gratefully, using the menu as a shield. Everything was expensive. Everything was in Korean and French. She pretended to consider her options while her mind raced. Order whatever you want, Jae-won said, his voice softer than it had been on the street. I'm paying. I can pay for myself, Baimida said automatically. Can you? The question hung in the air between them, sharp and honest. Baimida looked up from her menu and found Jae-won watching her with those dark unreadable eyes. He wasn't mocking her. He was simply stating what they both knew to be true. No, she said finally, setting the menu down. But I appreciate the illusion of choice. Something shifted in Jae-won's expression. Not quite a smile but close. I understand that, he said quietly. More than you might think. They ordered. Baimida let Jae-won recommend dishes, partly because she was out of her depth and partly because she was curious to see what he would choose. The food arrived in waves, each dish more beautiful than the last. So why am I here? Baimida asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Really? Jae-won set down his chopsticks and leaned back in his chair. I've been thinking about what you said in that video, he said. About success being the version of yourself you become. I was just saying words, Baimida admitted. Things that sound good online. I know, Jae-won said. But they're not entirely wrong. Everyone in this city is performing some version of themselves. You're just more honest about it. Honest? Baimida laughed, the sound bitter. You caught me lying on camera. No, Jaewon corrected. I caught you surviving. There's a difference. The words hit harder than Baimida expected. She blinked rapidly, fighting the sudden pressure behind her eyes. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice rough. Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his water glass. I hate public appearances, he said finally. I hate the performance of being Park Jaewon. The speeches, the photo opportunities, the carefully managed image. But it's necessary for business. So? So you understand performance, he said, meeting her eyes. You understand the gap between who you are and who you need to appear to be. I want to learn from that. Baimida stared at him. You want image consulting from someone you caught lying? I want honesty from someone who knows how to perform, Jaewon corrected. They're not the same thing. What's in it for me? Visibility, Jaewon said simply. Access. The chance to create content that people actually want to watch. And, he added, pulling a business card from his pocket, a consulting fee that will make your visa stress a little less urgent. The number he wrote on the back of the card made Baimida's chest tighten. It was more money than she'd made in the last 3 months combined. This is insane, she whispered. Yes, Jaewon agreed. But so is standing next to strangers' cars and calling it success. At least this insanity pays. Baimida looked at the card, at the number, at the man across from her who somehow managed to look both powerful and lonely. Why do I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil? Because you're smart, Jaewon said. And because the devil usually offers exactly what you need. He paused. But for what it's worth, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just tired of being alone in rooms full of people. The honesty in his voice was unexpected and devastating. Baimida folded the card carefully and put it in her purse. Okay, she said. I'll help you. But I have conditions. Name them. I don't pretend we're dating for content. I don't lie about who you are. And if I ever feel like I'm in danger, financially, legally, or emotionally, I walk away. No questions asked. Jaewon extended his hand across the table. Deal. His grip was firm and warm, and when Baimida shook his hand she felt like she was crossing a line she couldn't see but could definitely feel. The next 2 weeks were surreal. Jaewon sent a car for her, not his personal vehicle but a company sedan with a driver who treated her with polite deference. They met 3 times, always in neutral locations, always with a specific purpose. The first time Baimida watched hours of footage of Jaewon at public events. He was stiff, formal, intimidating. He delivered speeches with perfect diction and zero warmth. He posed for photos like he was being held at gunpoint. You hate being there, Baimida observed. Obviously. So stop trying to look powerful, she said. You already are powerful. Everyone knows it. Try looking human instead. The second time she brought him different clothes, still expensive but softer. A navy sweater instead of a suit jacket. Fitted jeans instead of dress pants. Jaewon had looked at the outfit like it was a personal insult. I'm not wearing this to a board meeting. No, Baimida agreed. But you're wearing it to the tech startup showcase next week. You want young entrepreneurs to trust you? Look like someone who remembers what it's like to build something from nothing. He'd worn the outfit. The photo someone had snapped of him talking casually with a nervous founder went viral within hours. Is Park Jaewon okay? CEO serves casual energy. Somebody call a doctor, I think I'm attracted to a corporate executive. The third time they met Jaewon was smiling before she even arrived. It worked, he said, showing her his phone. Investor inquiries are up 30%. My PR team thinks I've had a personality transplant. Maybe you have, Baimida teased, sitting beside him at the outdoor cafe he'd chosen. Maybe, Jaewon agreed. He looked at her seriously. Thank you. For seeing something other than what everyone else sees. You're welcome, Bimeda said and meant it. They were sitting like that, close enough for conversation, far enough for propriety, when a woman approached their table with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Yoon Era was beautiful in the way that expensive things were beautiful, perfect and cold and untouchable. Her designer dress probably cost more than Bimeda's entire wardrobe. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. Jaewon, she said warmly, ignoring Bimeda entirely. I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy, Jaewon said, his tone cooling immediately. I can see that, Era said, finally looking at Bimeda. The assessment in her eyes was quick and brutal. How interesting. Era, this is Bimeda Ndlovu, Jaewon said, his voice carefully neutral. She's consulting on brand strategy. Bimeda, this is Yoon Era. She sits on several boards that partner with Silverline. Consulting, Era repeated, tasting the word like it was sour. How modern of you, Jaewon. She smiled at Bimeda, all teeth and no warmth. I hope you're finding Honggang City welcoming. It can be such a difficult place for outsiders to navigate. So many unspoken rules. I'm learning, Bimeda said evenly, refusing to look away. Good, Era said. Learning your place is so important. Well, I won't keep you. Jaewon, we should catch up properly soon. Without distractions. She walked away, trailing expensive perfume and implied threats. If you're feeling this tension, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think Era's going to do next. Because trust me, we're just getting started. That was a warning, Bimeda said once Era was out of earshot. Yes, Jaewon agreed. Should I be worried? Jaewon was quiet for a moment, his jaw tight. Era doesn't like change, he said finally. And she especially doesn't like losing influence. She'll make things difficult. How difficult? That depends on how much she thinks you matter. The words should have been reassuring, the implication that Bimeda didn't matter enough to be a real threat. Instead they stung. Because she was starting to think that maybe she did matter, at least a little, and the idea that Jaewon might not see it made her chest ache in ways she didn't want to examine. The messages started 2 days later. Anonymous accounts, all saying similar things. Visa expires in 60 days. Check your housing contract. Gold diggers always get exposed. Bimeda's hand shook as she scrolled through them. Someone had done research. Someone knew things about her life that weren't public. Her visa situation. Her sublease. Her financial struggles. She called Jaewon immediately. Someone's digging into my background, she said without preamble. There was a pause on the other end. Come to Skybridge Residence, Jaewon said. We need to talk in private. Skybridge Residence was everything Bimeda had imagined and worse. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than a car. Art on the walls that looked museum quality. Jaewon answered the door himself, dressed casually in a t-shirt and sweatpants that somehow made him look younger and more vulnerable. Show me, he said, taking her phone. He scrolled through the messages, his expression growing darker with each one. Era, he said finally. Or someone she hired. This is her style, precise, personal, designed to make you feel exposed. Why? Bimeda asked, her voice breaking slightly. I'm nobody. I'm just helping you look better in photos. You're making me human, Jaewon said, looking up from the phone. That's dangerous to people who need me to stay distant. Era's built her entire network on being one of the few people I tolerate. If I don't need her influence anymore. I can't do this, Bimeda interrupted. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city spread out below, glittering and indifferent. I can't afford to have my visa issues become public. I can't lose my housing. I'm barely surviving as it is. I can help with that, Jaewon said quietly. No, Bimeda snapped, spinning to face him. Don't you understand? That makes it worse. If people think I'm with you for money, for security, for access. Are you? The question stopped her cold. Bimeda stared at him, at the careful blankness of his expression that she was starting to recognize as armor. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what this is. I don't know why you really want me here. And I don't know if any of this is real or just another performance. Jaewon stood slowly, moving toward her with the kind of deliberate care you'd use approaching something fragile. My entire life is a performance, he said, stopping just close enough for her to see the exhaustion in his eyes. My company, my reputation, everything I've built, it's all based on being someone people fear and respect. Park Jaewon, the CEO. Park Jaewon, the dealmaker. Park Jaewon, who never shows weakness. Then why risk it? Bimeda asked. Why bring someone like me into your life? Because I'm tired, Jaewon said simply. I'm tired of being alone in rooms full of people. I'm tired of every conversation being a negotiation. I'm tired of having everything except someone who sees me as human. He paused, his voice dropping. You looked at me that first night at dinner and called me lonely. No one's ever said that to me before. And you were right. Bimeda felt something crack in her chest. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm scared of becoming another person who needs you. I'm scared of losing what little I built here. I'm scared that when you get bored of playing human I'll be left with nothing. Then leave, Jaewon said. I mean it. If this feels like too much, if you think I'm using you or if you think you're using me, walk away now. I'll still pay you for the work you've done. I'll make sure Era backs off. You can go back to your life. What life? Bimeda asked, tears finally spilling over. The one where I pretend to be successful while I'm 3 months behind on everything? The one where I film fake motivational content to feel like I matter? That life? Jaewon reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he pulled her into an embrace that felt like surrender. His arms were strong and warm and Bimeda let herself break against his chest, sobbing out months of accumulated fear and loneliness and desperate performance. I built an empire on fear, Jaewon said quietly, his voice rough against her hair. I'm good at keeping people at a distance. I'm good at making them think I don't need them. But I'm not good at this. I'm not good at letting someone see the parts of me that aren't powerful or controlled or certain. Bimeda pulled back enough to look at him. His eyes were wet and the vulnerability in them was almost painful to witness. What do you want from me? She asked again, needing a real answer this time. I want you to stay, Jaewon said. Not because I'm paying you. Not because you need something from me. But because this, whatever it is between us, feels real in a life that's mostly performance. I want to help you build something that lasts. And I want you to help me remember what it's like to be human. That's terrifying, Bimeda said. Yes, Jaewon agreed. But maybe that means it matters. She kissed him then, messy and impulsive and born from exhaustion and honesty and the desperate need to believe that something real could exist in a world of carefully managed images. Jaewon kissed her back with the kind of hunger that came from years of starvation, his hands gentle but insistent as they pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bimeda rested her forehead against his. I'm still scared, she whispered. Me too, Jaewon admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than comfortable alone. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the expensive silence of his penthouse while the city below continued its indifferent glittering. The next morning Bimeda woke up in Jaewon's guest room, he'd insisted, his respect for boundaries even more attractive than his wealth. She found him in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast with the kind of focused determination he probably applied to business deals. I can't cook, he admitted when he saw her watching. I can see that, Bimeda said, surveying the chaos. What are you attempting? Pancakes. Or possibly a fire hazard. I haven't decided yet. She laughed, moving to rescue the situation. They cooked together, Bimeda fixing his mistakes while Jaewon watched with genuine fascination. It was domestic and strange and nothing like the glamorous life her followers imagined. I want to post something, Bimeda said as they sat down to eat. Something true. Jaewon looked up, immediately serious. Are you sure? No, she admitted. But I'm tired of lying. And if Era's going to expose me anyway, I'd rather control the narrative. What will you say? Baimida thought about it, pushing eggs around her plate. That life abroad isn't what social media shows. That I've been struggling. That success is messier than inspiration porn makes it look. She paused. That I met someone who taught me the difference between being seen and being known. That will cost you followers, Jaewon warned. Maybe, Baimida agreed. Or maybe it'll cost me the wrong followers and attract the right ones. She posted the video that afternoon from Jaewon's balcony. No filter. No perfect lighting. Just her face, her truth, and the city behind her as witness. Hi everyone, she started, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I need to be honest with you. That viral video where I got caught using someone's car? That wasn't the first time I performed success I don't have. It wasn't even the worst time. I came to Korea with dreams and determination, but I've spent most of my time here scared and broke and pretending everything was fine. She took a breath, feeling Jaewon's presence just off camera, a silent support. I've learned something though. There's a difference between image and identity. Between being visible and being real. I've been so focused on looking successful that I forgot to actually build anything. So here's the truth, I don't have it figured out. I'm still learning Korean. I'm still struggling with my visa. I'm still figuring out who I am when nobody's watching. Another breath, this one shakier. But I met someone who helped me understand that maybe that's okay. Maybe the performance of perfection is what's killing us. Maybe admitting you need help is braver than pretending you don't. Maybe being honest about the struggle is more valuable than faking the success. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes fierce. So this is me, unfiltered. Still in Honggang City. Still chasing dreams. But doing it with a little more truth and a little less pretense. If that's not the content you signed up for, I understand. But this is the only content I can keep creating without losing myself. She ended the video and immediately wanted to delete it. Her hand hovered over the button, trembling. Don't, Jaewon said quietly from behind her. Let it breathe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Some people unsubscribed immediately, leaving cruel comments about wasted potential and attention-seeking. But others, so many others, responded with their own truths. Stories of struggle abroad. Confessions of financial desperation masked by Instagram perfection. Messages thanking her for the honesty. Her follower count dropped by 3,000 in the first hour. Then it started climbing again, faster than before. They're finding you, Jaewon observed, watching over her shoulder. Who? People who needed permission to stop performing, he said. You just gave it to them. Baimida leaned back against his chest, letting herself be held while the internet did its chaotic work. Era's going to hate this, she said. Definitely, Jaewon agreed. But that's not your problem anymore. It's mine. He was wrong, of course. It became both their problems 2 days later when Era showed up at Skybridge residence unannounced. Baimida had been staying there semi-permanently, not moving in exactly but not leaving either. They were in that strange liminal space between professional relationship and personal one, figuring out boundaries through trial and error. When the doorbell rang, Jaewon's expression immediately darkened. Stay here, he said. No, Baimida replied, standing. If this is about me, I'm facing it. Era looked even more expensive than usual, her designer suit sharp enough to cut. Her smile when she saw Baimida was poisonous. How cozy, she said, pushing past Jaewon into the apartment. Playing house already? What do you want, Era? Jaewon's voice was cold. To warn you, Era said, turning to face them both. Your little authenticity experiment is making people nervous. Board members. Investors. People who built their strategies around your predictability. Let them be nervous, Jaewon said. It's not just about you anymore, Era continued, her eyes sliding to Baimida. Your reputation affects everyone connected to Silverline. Every business relationship. Every deal. And right now you're risking all of it for. She waved dismissively at Baimida, whatever this is. This has a name, Baimida said quietly. And you're standing in her presence. Era's smile sharpened. Oh, she has spirit. How entertaining. Tell me, dear, what happens when J1 gets bored? When the novelty of slumming it with a struggling content creator wears off? Do you have a backup plan, or are you putting all your eggs in this very expensive basket? That's enough, J1 said, his voice dangerous. Is it? Era asked, turning back to him. Because from where I'm standing you're making the same mistake you made with your father's company, thinking emotion is a valid business strategy. You know how that ended. The words landed like a bomb. J1's entire body went rigid, his face draining of color. Baimida watched the transformation in real time, watched him retreat behind walls she'd spent weeks helping him lower. Get out, he said, his voice barely audible. Gladly, Era replied. But think about what you're risking, J1. And you, she added, looking at Baimida, think about what you're costing him. People like us don't end up with people like you. Not permanently. We're just tourists in your world and eventually we go home. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and carefully calculated cruelty. The silence she left behind was suffocating. Baimida watched J1, saw the way his hands were clenched into fists, saw the familiar distance creeping back into his eyes. What did she mean about your father's company? Baimida asked gently. It doesn't matter. J1. I said it doesn't matter, he snapped, the harshness in his voice making her flinch. Then, seeing her reaction, his expression crumbled. I'm sorry. I need some time. He walked to his office and closed the door, leaving Baimida standing alone in the enormous living room, feeling exactly as small as Era had wanted her to feel. She could have left. Should have probably. But instead she sat on his designer couch and waited. An hour passed. Then 2. She scrolled through her phone, reading comments on her viral honesty video, trying to remember why she'd thought the truth was worth the pain. When J1 finally emerged, his eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. He looked at her with genuine surprise. You're still here. Of course I'm still here, Baimida said. He sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. My father built Silverline, he said after a long silence. Brilliant businessman. Terrible father. When he died he left me everything, company, debts, reputation. But there was a condition. I had to maintain the company's ruthless image. Keep everyone afraid. Keep everyone at a distance. Show no weakness. That's why you're so isolated, Baimida realized. I thought it was the price of success, J1 admitted. I thought becoming the person everyone feared was the same as becoming powerful. But it just made me alone. And then you came along and for the first time in years I remembered what it felt like to be human. To be seen as something other than a threat or an opportunity. He looked at her finally, his eyes devastated. But Era's right about one thing. I'm risking everything my father built. Every relationship, every carefully maintained alliance. And I'm asking you to risk everything too, your stability, your reputation, your future. For what? For someone who doesn't even know if he can unlearn a lifetime of emotional distance? Baimida reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. I think you already are unlearning it, she said softly. The fact that this terrifies you, that you're questioning everything, that's not weakness. That's courage. It doesn't feel like courage. Courage never does, Baimida said. It feels like falling. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we have to fall before we can figure out who catches us. J1 pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I don't want you to pay the price for my choices, he whispered. Then let me make my own choices, Baimida replied. And my choice is to stay. Not because I need you, though let's be honest, the financial security doesn't hurt. But because when I'm with you I feel like the person I'm becoming is better than the person I was pretending to be. That's worth fighting for. They held each other in the quiet of his apartment while the city below continued its indifferent life. The next few weeks were a negotiation between who they'd been and who they were becoming. Jaewon loosened his grip on the ruthless CEO persona, showing up to meetings in casual clothes, speaking more freely with employees, making decisions based on values rather than just profit margins. Some board members resigned. Some investors pulled out. But new ones, younger ones, more interested in companies with soul, started reaching out. BehindThePerfection continued posting honest content, documenting her actual life rather than a curated fantasy. She talked about visa stress, cultural adjustment, the weird intimacy of dating someone from a completely different world. Her follower count stabilized at a smaller but more engaged audience. Brands started reaching out, not the luxury ones but companies that valued authenticity over aspiration. They learned each other slowly. BehindThePerfection discovered that Jaewon liked terrible action movies and expensive wine. He learned that she sang when she cooked and cried during emotional commercials. They fought sometimes, about money, about boundaries, about the 100 small ways their different worlds collided. But they always came back to each other, always chose honesty over performance. 3 months after that first dinner at Cloud9 Lounge, Jaewon took BehindThePerfection to Horizon Hill Lookout. It was one of those perfect evenings when the city looked like a promise, all glittering lights and infinite possibility. I used to come here when I was younger, Jaewon said, standing at the railing. Before my father died. Before everything became about maintaining image and controlling perception. I'd come here and imagine different versions of my life. What did you imagine? BehindThePerfection asked, leaning against him. Happiness mostly, he admitted. The freedom to be ordinary. To make mistakes without them costing millions. To care about someone without it being a strategic weakness. Do you still imagine those things? Jaewon turned to face her, his hands framing her face with careful reverence. I don't have to imagine anymore, he said. You're here. And everything I was afraid would destroy me, being vulnerable, being honest, being human, it's actually the only thing that's made me feel alive. BehindThePerfection felt tears prick her eyes. I'm still scared sometimes, she confessed. Scared that I'm not enough. That I don't belong in your world. That one day you'll realize you could have had someone easier, someone who fits better. I don't want easier, Jaewon said fiercely. I don't want someone who fits. I want you, complicated and honest and brave enough to call me out when I'm hiding. You make me better. Not because you're trying to fix me but because being with you makes me want to fix myself. That's a lot of pressure, BehindThePerfection said, but she was smiling through her tears. Then let me take some of it, Jaewon replied. Let me help you build something that lasts. Not just content or followers or image but an actual life. Here, with me, in this complicated city where neither of us quite fits, but maybe that's the point. What's the point? That fitting isn't the goal, Jaewon said. Being real is. Being seen is. Finding someone who makes the performance worthwhile, or better yet makes you forget you're performing at all. They kissed against the backdrop of the glittering city, two people learning to be human in a world that rewarded performance. BehindThePerfection posted about it later, not the kiss but the moment. The honest conversation on a hilltop about fear and authenticity and choosing reality over image. The engagement was massive, the comments full of people thanking her for showing love without the fairytale gloss. You're changing things, Jaewon observed, reading over her shoulder. We're changing things, BehindThePerfection corrected. You're the one showing a room full of executives that profits and humanity don't have to be enemies. Partnership then, Jaewon said, pulling her close. Partnership, BehindThePerfection agreed. But of course Era wasn't done. She made one final play 3 weeks later, leaking carefully selected information to business publications. The articles painted Jaewon as compromised, too emotional, too influenced by his relationship to make sound business decisions. They questioned BehindThePerfection's motives, implied gold digging, suggested manipulation. The morning the articles dropped, Bimeda woke to hundreds of notifications. Her phone was on fire with screenshots and links and concerned messages. She felt her stomach drop, felt the familiar panic rising. Then she felt Jaewon's hand on her shoulder. "I need to address this," he said quietly. "Publicly." "How?" "By telling the truth," he said simply. "By showing them what we've shown each other, that being human doesn't make you weak. It makes you real." He scheduled a press conference for that afternoon. No prepared remarks. No PR team managing the message. Just him, standing in front of cameras, choosing honesty over control. "Many of you have read the recent articles questioning my judgment," Jaewon began, his voice steady. "They're right to question it. I have changed. I've made decisions this year that prioritize values over profit margins, humanity over ruthlessness, authenticity over image. And I've made those decisions because of BehindThePerfection." He paused, looking directly at the cameras. "Bimeda is a content creator who taught me that performance and authenticity aren't enemies, they're tools. That being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's courage. That the most powerful thing you can do is show up as your real self even when the world rewards your mask." Another pause, this one longer. "I built Silverline on fear. On distance. On maintaining an image that kept everyone at arm's length. And it worked by conventional measures. But it also made me lonely. It made me into someone who had everything except reasons to care about having it. Bimeda didn't fix that, she showed me I could fix it myself. She showed me that being fully human is riskier and messier and infinitely more worthwhile than being perfect." He smiled slightly, the expression transforming his usually severe face. "So yes, I've changed. My decisions reflect different priorities. My leadership style has evolved. And if that makes me unsuitable in some people's eyes, then I accept that. But I won't apologize for choosing reality over performance. I won't apologize for being human. And I definitely won't apologize for falling in love with someone who had the courage to do the same." The room erupted in questions. Jaewon answered some, deflected others, and maintained his composure throughout. But what mattered, what really mattered, was that he'd chosen honesty when control would have been easier. The response was split as expected. Some investors pulled out immediately. Some business partners severed ties. But others, younger entrepreneurs, ethical companies, people tired of the ruthless corporate paradigm, reached out with new opportunities. Silverline stock dipped, then stabilized, then slowly climbed as the market adjusted to this new version of Park Jae-won. And through it all, Bimeda kept documenting. Not the glamorous parts but the real ones. The stress of visa applications. The joy of successful renewals. The complicated dance of blending two cultures, two worlds, two very different lives into something neither had expected but both chose daily. 6 months after that first encounter beside his car, they attended a small cultural event blending African and Korean art. It was intimate, unpretentious, full of people creating rather than performing. Bimeda wore a dress that combined traditional African prints with contemporary Korean design. Jaewon wore a simple shirt and slacks, his usual armor finally discarded. They moved through the gallery together, pointing out favorite pieces, discussing meaning and interpretation and the beautiful complexity of cultural fusion. Someone recognized them, someone always did, but instead of performing they just smiled and continued their conversation. Later Bimeda set up her phone to film a quick update for her followers. She checked the angle, adjusted the lighting, then paused. "Wait," she said, reaching for the settings. "What are you doing?" Jaewon asked, moving to stand beside her. "Removing the filter," Bimeda said, watching the screen transform as the smoothing effect disappeared. Her skin looked real, pores and texture and evidence of actual humanity. The lighting was less flattering. The composition less perfect. Better, she decided, pressing record. "Hey everyone," she said, Jaewon visible beside her in the frame. "Quick update from an art gallery in Honggang City. We're looking at work that refuses to choose between cultures, that insists complexity is beautiful. Felt appropriate given everything. She glanced at Jaewon, who smiled, a real smile, soft and unguarded. I've learned something this year, Bimeda continued, looking back at the camera. The filter isn't just the one on your camera. It's the one in your life. The performance you maintain. The image you curate. The distance you keep from your own truth. And removing that filter, actually showing up as yourself, flaws and fears and all, that's terrifying. But it's also the only way to build something real. She reached for Jaewon's hand, lacing their fingers together on camera. So here we are, no filters. No performance. Just two people who met in the most ridiculous way possible and somehow found something worth building. It's not perfect. It's not always Instagram-worthy. But it's real. And after everything, that's what matters most. She ended the recording and immediately posted it, no editing, no second-guessing, just raw truth. That was brave, Jaewon said quietly. That was necessary, Bimeda corrected. Besides, you set the example. The least I could do was follow. They stood there in the gallery, holding hands while strangers moved around them, appreciating art that refused to conform. The video would get thousands of views. Some comments would be cruel. Others would be supportive. But for the first time, Bimeda didn't need the validation. She had something better, reality without the performance, love without the filter, a life that was messy and complicated and authentically hers. Ready to go home? Jaewon asked. Where's home? He smiled. Wherever we are. Together. They walked out into the Honggang city night, two people from different worlds building one shared reality, choosing truth over image, presence over performance, and each other over the safe distance they'd both once required to survive. The city lights glittered around them, indifferent and beautiful. But for once they weren't performing for those lights. They were just living in them, together, no filters required. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a comment telling me your thoughts on Bimeda and Jaewon's journey, what resonated with you. What surprised you? And smash that like button to support more stories that explore love, identity, and the courage it takes to be real in a world that rewards performance. Because this isn't just their story, it's about all of us learning to remove our filters and show up as our authentic selves. See you in the next one.